Welcome back, coin collectors and treasure hunters. Money do you have won? Today, we're uncovering 5 of the most valuable Lincoln Wheat Pennies ever sought after by collectors, and some examples can bring surprisingly large amounts of money when they are rare, highly graded, certified, or have a significant variety or error. These classic United States 1-cent coins may have been sitting unnoticed in an old collection, coin jar, or box of inherited coins for decades. In this video, we'll take a close look at what makes these 5 Lincoln Wheat Pennies special, including their dates, mint marks, condition, rare varieties, and other characteristics that can dramatically affect their market value. We'll also discuss the difference between an ordinary circulated wheat penny and an exceptional example that attracts serious collector attention. So before you spend, sell, or dismiss an old wheat penny as just another 1-cent coin, take a closer look. You could be holding a piece of American numismatic history. Stay with us until the end, because one of these 5 coins might be the one that surprises you the most. Let's get started. First up, this coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, where cents traditionally carried no mint mark, and it belongs to one of the most recognizable series in American numismatics, the Lincoln Wheat Cent. The 1941 issue is especially interesting because it was produced during a dramatic period in United States history, just as the nation was moving toward full involvement in World War II. According to PCGS and NGC records, the 1941 Philadelphia cent had a mintage of roughly 887 million pieces, making it a common date overall rather than a classic low mintage rarity. However, that does not mean every 1941 penny is common in every condition. A normal circulated example may be worth only a modest premium, while an exceptionally preserved mint state red example can bring dramatically higher prices. PCGS records an auction result of $15,600 for an MS-68 RD 1941 cent sold in January 2025, demonstrating how much condition can change the value of an otherwise common date. The 1941 Lincoln cent was created during an extraordinary chapter in American history. The United States was still officially outside World War II for most of the year, but international events were rapidly changing the country's economy and political environment. Industrial production was increasing, military preparation was accelerating, and demand for basic materials was growing. The Philadelphia Mint responded with enormous production of Lincoln cents, and the 1941 issue became one of the largest Lincoln cent productions of its era. The design itself was already more than 3 decades old. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln had first appeared on the cent in 1909, making it the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical person. The reverse displayed 2 wheat ears surrounding the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America, along with the familiar motto EPLURBUSUNUM. This classic wheat reverse continued until 1958, so the 1941 coin represents an important part of the final decades of this historic design. NGC notes that the 1941 Philadelphia production approached the billion coin level as wartime economic activity boosted mintage's coin, with no mint mark. One of the easiest ways to identify this particular coin is to look directly beneath the date on the obverse. If there is no letter, that is not automatically a mistake or an indication that something is missing. For the 1941 Lincoln cent, a blank area beneath the date indicates that the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Denver coins carried a D, while San Francisco coins carried an S. Therefore, a genuine 1941 penny without a mint mark is the Philadelphia issue. The coin measures approximately 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 3.11 grams, has a plain edge, and was made from a bronze composition containing approximately 95% copper with tin and zinc. The obverse features Lincoln facing right, while the reverse shows the 2 wheat stalks that gave the series its famous nickname. These physical characteristics can be useful when examining an old coin for authenticity, especially if someone claims that a particular 1941 cent is an unusual error. 1941 penny more interesting. The biggest factor separating an ordinary 1941 wheat penny from a potentially valuable example is condition. An uncirculated coin has not experienced the normal circulation, where that removes detail from Lincoln's hair, cheek, jaw, and the wheat ears on the reverse. Collectors also pay close attention to surface marks, original luster, strike quality, color, and eye appeal. Copper coins are commonly classified by color as brown, or red, with original red examples generally commanding the strongest premiums when all other factors are equal. This is extremely important with the 1941 issue because millions of examples were produced, but far fewer have survived in truly exceptional mint state condition, with attractive original red color and minimal marks. PCGS specifically describes the 1941 cent as a significant conditional rarity at the MS67 plus RD level and above, even though the date itself is plentiful. In other words, the rarity is not primarily the year, it is the combination of year, grade, color, strike, and preservation. Another reason collectors examine 1941 wheat pennies carefully is the existence of recognized varieties and double-die coins. A normal 1941 Philadelphia cent may have relatively modest value, but a properly attributed variety can be much more desirable. PCGS lists multiple 1941 double-die obverse varieties, including F-101, F-102, and F-103. These varieties are collected because doubling can create noticeable differences in portions of the lettering or date, depending on the specific variety. One F-103 example reached an auction record of $8,280 in MS66 in a heritage auction sale, while an F-102 example has a documented auction record of $908 in MS64. These figures illustrate why collectors should not judge every 1941 penny solely by its date. At the same time, viewers should be careful. Ordinary machine doubling, die deterioration, scratches, damage, or lighting effects can be mistaken for a valuable doubled die. Professional attribution and authentication become increasingly important when a coin appears to show a major variety. So, what could a 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark in uncirculated condition be worth today? The answer depends heavily on its exact grade and color designation. Current published NGC guide data show that standard mint state examples can range from relatively small premiums in lower mint state grades to substantially higher amounts as quality increases. For example, the NGC MS guide shown for the 1941 issue lists values around $0.45 at MS60, $1.15 at MS61, $2.50 at MS63, $4.75 at MS64, $8.75 at MS65, $13 at MS66, and $29 at MS67 for the referenced brown category, while red and red-brown examples can differ significantly. These are guide figures, not guaranteed selling prices. At the very top end, certified red examples can move into the hundreds or thousands of dollars, with exceptional auction pieces reaching far beyond ordinary guide levels. PCGS recorded $15,600 MS68 RD auction result is an excellent example of how an extraordinary specimen can command a major premium. Therefore, it would be misleading to say that every 1941 no-mint mark penny is worth thousands. The major values are concentrated in exceptionally graded, certified, attractive, or unusual examples. If you have a 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny, examine it carefully before deciding what it is worth. Start by confirming the date and checking beneath the date for the absence of a mint mark. Next, inspect Lincoln's portrait for signs of wear. Look closely at the hair above Lincoln's ear, the cheek, jaw, and the highest points of the design. Then turn the coin over and examine the wheat ears, lettering, and central details. Look for original luster, unusually sharp details, minimal contact marks, and attractive natural color. Avoid cleaning the coin, because improper cleaning can damage the original surface and significantly reduce collector appeal. If you believe you have a high-grade red example or a possible double-die variety, professional grading and attribution may be worth considering. The difference between an ordinary coin and an elite certified specimen can be enormous, which is why condition and authentication are so important in the upper levels of the market. PCGS specifically emphasizes that the 1941 cent becomes much more difficult to find in exceptional grades despite its large original production. The 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark is a fascinating piece of American history, but its value should be judged realistically. It was produced at Philadelphia in enormous numbers, so the date alone does not make it a rare coin. What makes certain examples exciting is their preservation, original color, superior strike, recognized varieties, errors, and certification. A typical circulated or lower-grade 1941 cent may be worth only a small amount above face value, while a high-grade certified red specimen can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and an extraordinary top-grade example has demonstrated the potential to reach much higher. The key lesson for collectors is simple. Do not clean it, do not assume every 1941 penny is automatically valuable, and do not overlook an unusually beautiful example just because the date is common. Always compare your coin with reliable price guides and documented auction results, and consider professional authentication when the potential value justifies it. The market changes over time, and actual selling prices depend on grade, certification, color, variety, eye appeal, and buyer demand. The market values discussed in this video are guide-level examples based on published numismatic information and documented auction results, not guaranteed selling prices. A normal circulated or lower-grade 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny should not automatically be advertised as worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Exceptional prices generally apply to specifically graded, certified, high-quality, rare variety, or otherwise special examples. Always verify current auction results and professional price guides before making a buying or selling decision. Next up, the date 1952 and a small D mint mark beneath Lincoln's portrait. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary 1-cent coin, but the 1952 D Lincoln Wheat Cent is an interesting piece of American coinage history. It was struck at the Denver Mint during the final decade of the famous Wheat Cent series, which ran from 1909 through 1958. The 1952 D had a substantial mintage of 746,130,000 pieces, making it a common date compared with some of the genuinely scarce Lincoln cents. It was made from the traditional bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, with a diameter of about 19 millimeters and a standard weight of 3.11 grams. But here's the important point for collectors. A large mintage does not mean every surviving example has the same value. Condition, original color, strike quality, varieties, and professional certification can make an enormous difference. So if you have a 1952 D wheat penny, don't immediately assume that the date alone makes it a fortune coin. Instead, examine the coin carefully and learn what makes a particular example more desirable. The history of this penny takes us back to the famous Lincoln cent, designed by Victor David Brenner. The Lincoln cent first appeared in 1909, and the wheat reverse became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. On the obverse is the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, while the reverse features two wheat ears surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America, along with the motto EPLURBUSUNUM. By 1952, Americans had already been using this design for more than 4 decades. The United States was experiencing the post-World War II era, and the country was moving into a period of major economic and technological change. The Denver Mint was producing large quantities of cents to satisfy everyday commerce, and the 1952 D issue was one of the year's major Lincoln cent varieties. Unlike the San Francisco issue, the Denver coin carries a small d below the date on the obverse. That tiny letter is extremely important because it identifies where the coin was manufactured. Collectors generally begin identifying a wheat penny by checking exactly these details: the date, mint mark, condition, and any unusual variety or error. Now let's talk specifically about the 1952 D mint mark. The D tells us that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint rather than the Philadelphia or San Francisco facilities. The 1952 D is not considered a key-date wheat penny simply because it has a D mint mark. In fact, its production of 746.13 million coins was quite high. Contemporary and modern collectors therefore normally encounter worn examples more frequently than truly exceptional pieces. The distinction becomes especially important when discussing a coin described as being in fine condition. A fine-grade Lincoln cent has experienced noticeable circulation, and important design details remain visible, but there is substantial wear across Lincoln's portrait and the wheat reverse. For a circulated 1952 D, the value is generally modest rather than automatically reaching hundreds or thousands of dollars. Current guide information shows relatively low values for ordinary examples, while specialized market data shows substantially higher prices for coins in exceptional mint state grades. This is why collectors should never confuse the value of a top-grade certified specimen with the value of a normal fine-condition coin. One of the most interesting aspects of the 1952 D is its variety potential. Professional numismatic references list regular brown, and red examples, as well as varieties involving an overmint mark. PCGS specifically identifies 1952 D/S overmint mark varieties, including the F-511 variety. In other words, some coins can contain additional characteristics that make them more interesting than a standard 1952 D cent. This is exactly why serious collectors examine the mint mark under magnification, instead of simply looking at the date. If your coin has an unusual mint mark shape, traces of another letter beneath or around the D, or other unusual die characteristics, it may deserve further investigation. However, viewers should be careful because damage, scratches, corrosion, or normal die wear can sometimes look like an error to an inexperienced collector. A genuine variety should be confirmed using trusted numismatic references or by a qualified specialist. Never assume that every unusual-looking mark is a valuable mint error. Condition is another major factor, and this is where the difference between a fine 1952D wheat penny and an uncirculated example becomes especially important. A circulated fine coin has lost much of its original surface texture through years of handling and contact. The highest points of Lincoln's hair and cheek will show wear, while the wheat stalks on the reverse may have softened details. By contrast, an uncirculated coin can retain much more of its original mint surface. Color also matters for copper Lincoln cents. Collectors commonly distinguish between brown, red-brown and red surfaces, with original red examples in high grades often receiving significant premiums. PCGS current price information for the 1952D shows that exceptional red specimens can command far more than ordinary circulated pieces, with the listed price levels rising substantially as grade increases. This demonstrates an important lesson for anyone searching through old coins. Rarity is not simply about age. A 1952 coin can be over 70 years old and still be relatively common, while a very high-grade example can be considerably more desirable because so few coins survived with exceptional surfaces. So what about the current 2026 market value? For an ordinary 1952D in fine condition, realistic values are generally in the range of a small premium over face value rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. One current market reference lists the 1952D around the low dollar range across common grades, while another market data source places a fine example around a few dollars, depending on the exact grade and market conditions. The bigger numbers belong to exceptional coins. PCGS records an auction result of $3,840 for a 1952D MS67 Plus red example, sold by Heritage Auctions in April 2023. Another 1952D red-brown example achieved $360 in MS65RB at Stack's Bowers in June 2024. These results show why headlines about thousands of dollars must be handled carefully. A normal fine-condition 1952D should not be advertised as automatically worth thousands. The major premiums are associated with extraordinary condition, color, certification, varieties, and competitive collector demand. There is also an important lesson here about the difference between catalog values, asking prices, and actual auction results. Coin prices can change depending on grade, certification company, color designation, eye appeal, strike, surface quality, provenance, variety, and the venue where the coin is sold. A coin listed online for a high asking price does not necessarily mean that buyers are actually paying that amount. Completed auction sales provide much stronger evidence of what collectors have been willing to pay. For the 1952D, the PCGS records demonstrate that elite examples can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars, but those coins are fundamentally different from an ordinary circulated fine specimen. Therefore, if you discover a 1952D wheat penny, the smartest approach is to identify it correctly first, and then compare it with coins of the same grade and color. If the coin appears unusually well preserved or shows a possible overmintmark variety, professional evaluation may be worthwhile. Finally, if you have a 1952D Lincoln Wheat penny in fine condition, take a close look before spending it, selling it, or cleaning it. Check the date, confirm the D mint mark beneath Lincoln, examine the amount of wear, and inspect both sides for unusual die characteristics. Most importantly, do not clean the coin in an attempt to make it look newer. Cleaning can damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. Remember that the 1952D is a historically interesting wheat cent, but its large mintage means that the ordinary circulated version is not automatically a rare fortune coin. The real excitement comes when a seemingly ordinary coin turns out to have an exceptional grade, attractive original color, or a recognized variety such as an overmintmark. Current references show that ordinary examples can be inexpensive, while elite certified specimens have reached hundreds or thousands of dollars. So check your old jars, coin albums, inherited collections, and boxes of wheat pennies, but judge the coin based on evidence, not just the year. Value disclaimer: market values change with grade, certification, surface condition, color designation, variety, authenticity, and actual auction results. The figures discussed here are reference market information, not a guarantee that every 1952D wheat penny will sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars. Exceptional prices generally apply to specifically graded, certified, high-quality, or unusual examples. Always verify current auction results and professional price guides before making a buying or selling decision. Next up, the date 1953 and a small d mint mark. It becomes a fascinating piece of American numismatic history. The 1953D Lincoln Wheat Cent was struck at the Denver Mint during the final decade of the famous Wheat Reverse series, which ran from 1909 through 1958. According to PCGS, the 1953D cent had a mintage of 700,515,000 pieces, making it a widely produced coin rather than a classic low-mintage rarity. But there is an important distinction between a coin being common in circulated grades and being scarce in exceptional condition. A heavily worn 1953D penny may have only a modest collectible value, while a spectacular, sharply struck, high-grade example with attractive original color can command dramatically more. That is why collectors do not simply ask, is a 1953D penny rare? Instead, they ask, what grade is it, what color designation does it have, how original is the surface, and does it contain a recognized variety? Those questions can make a major difference in the coin's value. To understand the importance of the 1953D wheat penny, we need to go back to the beginning of the Lincoln Cent series. The Lincoln Cent was introduced in 1909, featuring President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and a wheat-ear reverse designed by Victor David Brenner. Brenner's portrait of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage, while the two wheat ears on the reverse gave the coin its famous wheat penny nickname. The design remained in production until 1958, meaning the 1953D belongs to the final years of a nearly half-century-long American coinage tradition. The coin itself is approximately 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs 3.11 grams, and is composed of a bronze alloy containing 95% copper with tin and zinc. By 1953, the United States was entering an important post-war period. The Korean War was underway, American manufacturing was expanding, and the nation was experiencing major economic and social changes. Millions of these pennies entered everyday commerce, passing through stores, cash registers, pockets, banks, and households. A surviving 1953D penny can therefore represent much more than 1 cent. It can be a small physical connection to American life in the early 1950s. One of the most important features to check on this coin is the D mint mark. On a 1953D Lincoln Wheat Cent, the letter D identifies the Denver Mint as the facility that produced the coin. This is different from a 1953 cent without a mint mark, which was struck at Philadelphia, and a 1953 cent, which was produced at San Francisco. The Denver Mint produced an enormous quantity of Lincoln cents in 1953, 700,515,000 examples, according to PCGS and NGC data. Because the mintage was large, collectors generally should not assume that every 1953D penny is automatically rare or worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. However, the large production number also makes the study of surviving examples interesting because condition becomes increasingly important. Many coins were heavily circulated and developed scratches, dents, discoloration, and wear. Others were lost, damaged, cleaned, or otherwise removed from collectible condition. The pieces that remained exceptionally sharp and attractive can therefore be considerably more desirable. Collectors should examine the mint mark carefully, because varieties involving the mint mark are also listed for the 1953D issue. PCGS specifically identifies repunched mint mark varieties, including D/D varieties such as F-501 and other recognized die varieties. These varieties can be far more interesting than a standard example, and are one reason experienced collectors inspect seemingly ordinary wheat pennies under magnification. If the 1953D penny you have is in old, dirty, or heavily circulated condition, the first thing to remember is that age alone does not make a coin extremely valuable. A coin can be more than 70 years old and still be relatively common in worn grades. What matters is the combination of date, mint mark, condition, color, strike quality, surface preservation, and variety. On the obverse, examine Lincoln's portrait and look closely at the hair, cheek, jaw, and coat details. Heavy circulation gradually removes the finer design elements. On the reverse, inspect the two wheat ears and the lettering, particularly the words 1 cent and United States of America. A worn example may have flattened wheat details, but an unusually sharp strike can retain impressive detail. Also check for major damage such as deep scratches, corrosion, holes, harsh cleaning, or unnatural surfaces. The original copper color is another major consideration. PCGS categorizes 1953D cents into brown, and red designations, and these color categories can have a substantial effect on the value of high-grade coins. A dark brown circulated coin and a blazing original red certified mint state coin may technically share the same date and mint mark, but they can occupy completely different levels of the collector market. Now let's talk about the part that attracts the most attention. How much can a 1953D wheat penny actually be worth today? The honest answer is that the value depends heavily on condition. Current guide information shows that ordinary 1953D examples in circulated condition can be worth only a small premium over face value. For example, USA Coin Book currently lists estimated values around $0.06 in average condition, with approximately $0.61 to $1.24 or more for uncirculated examples, depending on grade. Other market sources show substantially higher values for exceptional certified pieces. APMEX, for example, lists indicative values for 1953D red examples rising through the mint state grades, with an M-67 example listed around $684 in its cited guide data. The most important point for viewers is that these are not guaranteed prices for every coin. A normal worn 1953D penny is not automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The large numbers generally belong to unusually high-grade, well-preserved, attractive, certified, or otherwise special examples. PCGS records an auction result of $920 for an U58 brown example, while its red listing records an auction result of $7,475 for an MS67 example. These documented results demonstrate how dramatically condition can change the market value of the same date and mint mark. One of the most exciting aspects of searching through a 1953D wheat penny is looking for characteristics that separate a normal coin from a more desirable collectible. The first major factor is grade. A coin with extensive circulation, scratches, discoloration, and flattened details will generally be worth much less than one that looks almost untouched. The second factor is color designation. Brown examples are common in circulated collections, while original red and red-brown pieces in high grades can attract much stronger collector interest. The third factor is strike quality and surface preservation. A coin can technically receive a high grade, but still be less attractive than another coin of the same grade if it has distracting marks or unattractive color. Finally, collectors should examine the mint mark and other areas for recognized varieties. PCGS lists 1953D repunched mint mark varieties and D/D RPM varieties, including F-501 and F-502 examples. This is where a simple magnifying glass can become a collector's best friend. If you notice unusual doubling, an apparent second mint mark impression, strange lettering, or other unusual characteristics, do not immediately assume that you have discovered a fortune. Instead, compare the feature with a recognized variety reference, or have the coin examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. There is a huge difference between a valuable 1953D wheat penny and an ordinary 1953D wheat penny, and collectors should be careful when hearing claims that every old example is worth hundreds, thousands, or even millions of dollars. The documented market evidence shows that most circulated 1953D cents are not extremely valuable. At the same time, exceptional pieces can absolutely reach impressive prices. PCGS reports an auction record of $7,475 for a 1953D red cent graded MS67, illustrating that a coin from a high mintage issue can still become highly valuable when it reaches an extraordinary level of preservation and quality. This is an important lesson for anyone searching old coins. Rarity is not determined by age alone. A coin from 1953 is certainly old, but its market value depends on how scarce that specific condition and variety are among surviving examples. Certification can also make a major difference because a professional grading company evaluates the coin, assigns a grade, and where applicable, identifies its color designation or variety. If you believe your 1953D penny is unusually sharp, has original red color, or shows a possible repunched mint mark, avoid cleaning it. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce its desirability. Handle the coin carefully by its edges and consider professional evaluation before making any selling decision. So if you have a 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny in old condition, should you keep it? Absolutely, especially if you enjoy American history and coin collecting. But if your goal is determining whether it is a major value coin, inspect it carefully rather than relying only on the date. Confirm that the date is 1953, verify the D-mint mark, examine both sides for unusual varieties, evaluate the amount of wear, look for original copper color, and check for cleaning, scratches, corrosion, or other damage. The 1953 issue had a substantial mintage of 700,515,000 coins, so a worn example should not automatically be advertised as a rare $1,000 treasure. However, the same issue can become significantly more desirable when it is preserved at an exceptional mint state level, carries an attractive red designation, or possesses a recognized variety. Documented auction results reaching into the hundreds and thousands of dollars show why condition and certification matter. As of 2026, the best approach is to think of the 1953 wheat penny as a condition-sensitive collectible. Most old circulated examples have modest values, while truly exceptional certified specimens can bring much stronger prices. And that is exactly why you should never spend, clean, or sell an interesting wheat penny before checking its details. You may not have a fortune, but you could have a surprisingly collectible piece of American coinage history next up. The 1955 Lincoln Wheat Cent has an interesting place in American numismatic history because it was produced during the final years of the classic wheat reverse design. The coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and the D below the date identifies its place of manufacture. More than 563 million 1955 cents were produced, so this is not a low mintage coin in the ordinary sense. In fact, most circulated examples are relatively common and have modest values. However, the story becomes much more interesting when condition, original color, strike quality, die characteristics, and certification enter the picture. Professional references indicate that high-grade 1955 cents can become considerably more valuable than worn examples, with exceptional certified pieces reaching the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. PCGS specifically notes that the 1955 becomes difficult to find in very high grades such as MS66 and especially MS67, which is one reason collectors pay substantial premiums for outstanding specimens. To understand this 1955 penny, we have to go back to the beginning of the Lincoln Cent series. The Lincoln Cent was introduced in 1909, and its obverse portrait of President Abraham Lincoln was designed by Victor David Brenner. The reverse featured two wheat ears surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America, creating the design that collectors now call the wheat reverse. The wheat cent remained in production until 1958, making the 1955 part of the final chapter of a coin series that had circulated through enormous changes in American history. By 1955, the United States was experiencing a period of post-war economic growth, expanding consumer culture, and major technological and social changes. Millions of Lincoln cents were needed for everyday commerce, so the United States Mint continued producing large quantities. The Denver Mint alone struck 563,257,500 Lincoln cents dated 1955. The large production explains why a normal circulated 1955 is not automatically a rare coin. What collectors are really looking for are examples that survive decades of circulation with unusually strong preservation, original red coloration, sharp details, or legitimate minting varieties. Identifying the coin correctly is one of the most important steps before discussing value. On the obverse, you should first locate the date 1955 beneath Abraham Lincoln's portrait. Directly below the date is the small D mint mark, indicating that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. The coin is approximately 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 3.11 grams, and was made from the traditional bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. On the reverse, you should see the familiar two wheat stalks framing the inscriptions 1 cent, United States of America, and EPLURBUSUNUM. Because the coin is almost 7 decades old, wear, discoloration, scratches, corrosion, and environmental damage are common. Collectors should be especially careful not to confuse a 1955 with the famous 1955 double die obverse. The famous 1955 double die variety is associated with the Philadelphia issue without a mint mark, not a normal 1955 Therefore, simply seeing a 1955 date and unusual-looking lettering does not automatically mean that the coin is the famous doubled die. Correct identification of the mint mark and variety is essential before assigning a premium value. Now comes the most important question: what can actually make a 1955D wheat penny valuable? The answer is primarily condition and preservation, rather than the date alone. A heavily circulated coin with a brown surface, scratches, dents, and significant wear generally has only a small premium over its 1 cent face value. But a coin that remained in exceptional condition for more than 70 years is a completely different story. The grading scale used by professional numismatists separates worn coins from mint state examples, with grades such as MS60, MS63, MS65, MS66, and MS67 representing progressively stronger preservation. The 1955D becomes particularly interesting at the upper end of the grading scale. PCGS Coin Facts describes the issue as difficult to find in MS66 or higher, and says MS67 examples are extremely uncommon. The reason is that many surviving coins have corrosion spots, contact marks, nicks, scratches, or other imperfections that prevent them from reaching the highest grades. This means that a 1955D that looks merely old is not necessarily valuable, while an exceptionally preserved example with excellent surfaces and strong original color can attract serious collector attention. If your 1955D wheat penny is specifically in good condition, it is important to keep expectations realistic. Good condition generally means that the coin has experienced significant circulation and that major design details are worn, although the date and major identifying features remain visible. Current price references show that ordinary circulated 1955D cents are generally worth only a modest amount, rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. One 2026 market guide lists circulated 1955D examples in relatively low price ranges, while USA Coin Book places an average condition example around just a few cents, with higher values beginning as preservation improves. This is an important lesson for collectors. An old coin is not automatically a high-value coin. Age alone does not create rarity. A coin can be more than 70 years old and still be common because hundreds of millions were originally struck and many survived. Therefore, if your 1955D is genuinely in good condition, heavily worn, brown, scratched, or damaged, you should not assume that it is worth thousands. The big money potential belongs primarily to exceptional high-grade specimens, certified coins, or examples with a genuinely desirable and authenticated variety or mint error. The exciting part of the 1955D story begins when we move far beyond ordinary good condition. Professional market references show that high-grade examples can be dramatically more valuable than circulated pieces. NGC's published information for the 1955D indicates that mint state examples can range upward substantially depending on their brown, or red color designation, with its listed RD range extending to around $1,350. Other market references report exceptionally high auction results, including a 1955D graded MS67 Plus RD that sold for $8,400 in 2024. These numbers demonstrate why collectors sometimes talk about a 1955D penny being worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, but those prices apply to exceptional examples, not an ordinary worn coin. The difference can be enormous. A circulated penny may be worth only a small amount, while a superbly preserved, professionally graded, original red specimen can command a major premium. This is also why condition should never be guessed casually. A coin that appears uncirculated to an inexperienced collector may receive a lower professional grade because of tiny marks, spotting, weak strike, discoloration, or surface problems. When examining a 1955D wheat penny, collectors should inspect several details instead of focusing only on the date. First, look carefully at the D-mint mark and make sure it is genuine and consistent with a Denver issue. Next, examine Lincoln's hair, cheek, jaw, and coat on the obverse for signs of wear. On the reverse, study the wheat ears and lettering for remaining sharpness. Then examine the coin's surfaces under good lighting. Copper cents can develop different color designations over time, commonly described as brown BN, red-brown RB, and red RD. Original red color can be especially desirable because it indicates that the copper surface has retained much of its original appearance, although color designation alone does not guarantee a high price. Look for spots, scratches, corrosion, carbon marks, stains, and cleaning. Do not polish or chemically clean the coin in an attempt to make it brighter. Cleaning can damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. Also remember that not every apparent doubling, crack, or strange mark is a valuable mint error. If you believe the coin contains an unusual variety, professional authentication and grading can be worthwhile, especially when the potential value is significant. So what should you remember if you discover a 1955D Lincoln Wheat Penny in good condition? The most important point is that this coin is historically interesting, but an ordinary worn example is generally not automatically a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. The 1955D had a huge mintage of 563,257,500 pieces, so circulated examples are relatively available. The real opportunity lies in finding a coin that survived in unusually high condition, especially a certified mint state example with attractive original red color and excellent surfaces. Current published references show ordinary circulated pieces at low values, while exceptional high-grade examples can reach hundreds or thousands, with documented auction results demonstrating just how high the very best specimens can go. If you have one in your collection, don't throw it away simply because it looks common. Examine the date, confirm the D-mint mark, check the surfaces, avoid cleaning it, and compare it with reliable grading standards. And remember the famous 1955 double die story. That legendary variety is not the normal 1955D. The best approach is to treat every unusual coin as a piece of history first and a potential treasure second. Value disclaimer: market values change with grade, certification, color designation, variety, surface condition, authenticity, and actual auction results. The dollar figures discussed here are reference market examples, not a guarantee that every 1955D wheat penny will sell for those amounts. In particular, a normal good condition 1955D should not be advertised as automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Exceptional prices generally apply to specifically graded, certified, high quality, or otherwise special examples. Next up, this wheat penny was struck at the Denver Mint and can be identified by the small D mint mark below the date. More than 1.098 billion 1950 cents were produced, so the date itself is not rare. However, collectors look closely at condition, color, strike quality, varieties, and unusual minting characteristics. The 1956D belongs to the famous Lincoln Wheat Cent series, designed by Victor David Brenner. The wheat reverse had been used since 1909 and would continue only until 1958, making the 1956D part of the final years of this historic design. The coin was made from a bronze alloy containing about 95% copper, with a diameter of 19 millimeters and a weight of about 3.11 grams. To identify your coin, first look at the front and locate the date 1956. Directly underneath should be the small d, showing that it was made at Denver. On the reverse, you should see the famous two wheat stalks surrounding 1 cent and United States of America. If your coin is in rough condition, some details may be weak because of decades of circulation, scratches, dirt, and surface wear. If your 1950-60 wheat penny is heavily worn or rough, don't automatically assume it is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Current reference values put an average condition example at around 6 cents, while common uncirculated examples can range from roughly 36 cents to $1.24 or more depending on grade. So a normal rough 1950-60 is generally a modest value coin. The real excitement begins when the coin has an unusual variety, excellent preservation, or another collectible feature. One important feature collectors should check is the possibility of a repunched mint mark. Sometimes described as a D over D, this variety can show traces of another mint mark beneath or around the visible D. Newmister catalogs a 1950-60 repunch mint mark variety. However, scratches and damage can easily be mistaken for a mint error, so a suspected variety should be compared with reliable references before claiming a high value. Condition can make a huge difference in the value of a 1950-60 collectors, especially pay attention to coins that retain their original red copper color and have very few marks. APMEX currently lists approximately $3 for uncirculated, $15 for M-65, $29 for M-66, and $377 for M-67 red examples. These prices show why an exceptionally preserved 1950-60 can be much more interesting than a heavily circulated example. The answer is yes, but only for exceptional examples, not for every 1950-60 penny. Market records show that top-grade pieces can reach much higher prices than ordinary circulated coins. PCGS recorded examples of exceptional 1950-60 cents have reached the thousands, while some reported top-grade pieces have sold for much more. This is why professional grading, original color, exceptional surfaces, and verified varieties can be extremely important when determining whether a coin deserves serious collector attention. Final advice and disclaimer. So before you spend or sell your 1950-60 Lincoln Wheat Penny, examine it carefully. Check the date, confirm the D-mint mark, inspect the wheat reverse, and look closely at the mint mark for possible varieties. Remember that most rough examples are worth only a small amount, while exceptional certified coins can be worth considerably more. Current market values can change based on grade, color, certification, variety, authenticity, demand, and actual auction results. Important value disclaimer. The prices discussed in this video are reference market estimates, not guarantees. A rough 1950-60 wheat penny should not automatically be considered a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Always have a potentially valuable example professionally evaluated before making an important buying or selling decision. Thanks for watching.